So, welcome back to another Patreon request, and this one comes from Cyborg19.99, who asked me to do a Patreon request of a crossover between a Hellsing Black Lagoon crossover, but not in the sense you might think. As you can see from the title, Hellsing versus Hotel Moscow. So it's basically an all-out war between the two. So, as always, if you guys would like to have a Patreon request done, just hit the link in the description box below. Head on over to my Patreon, hit the third tier that'll allow you access to do so. But other than that, let's get started with the video. So, the story begins essentially at in Roanapur. And what is going on is that there was a spy within Hotel Moscow. Essentially, that spy got found out, and of course Balalaika doesn't really care much for spies, and she's just like torturing the guy, and she's like, you know, are you SAS? Are you Mossad? Are you FBI? Come on. But the guy is just like, you know, I'm not talking or anything, and she's like, cool. You know, I'm obviously not going to get anything out of you because we've been at this for like 7 days, and that's in like the torture tactics we have in, you know, we use. Is pretty impressive. So whoever you are and who you work for is pretty hardcore. And he's like, you have no idea the shitstorm that's coming for you. And she's like, I think we can handle it. So guy gets killed. But however, the spy's last reports did reach the desk of his leaders. And that, of course, is the Hellsing organization. Basically, in order to stem the tide of any in instances that happened in in Brazil, essentially there was an edict going around of Hellsing agents being spread across several nations and other organizations. And there was one spy within Roanapur, and that spy's dead. So essentially, they were just trying to figure out any signs of Millennium. And sure enough, there were reports that there may have been a tie between Millennium and Hotel Moscow. So, with the agent dead, however, that basically, like for Integra, that basically said, she's like, okay, that basically says everything I need to hear. So, okay, let's get over there and destroy the place. So, there are agents who are sent into, rather than, because immediately, like, Walter basically says, hey, so, are you just going to send Alucard? This can, what, and, Integra's like, no, he's gonna cause an incident like he did in Brazil, so I'd prefer not to play Alucard and, play the Alucard immediately. So... Alucard's, like, in the back row, because she's like, this could easily be a wild goose chase or something like that, and besides, they're just Russian mobsters. Like, our men can handle them. So there are agents who are sent into, there are boots on the ground of the Hellsing organization, and they start, like, shooting up certain targets that belong to Hotel Moscow. And immediately the war is on between Hotel Moscow, who have recently come across, like, what they're, who they're battling. And they're like, it is a branch of the British government, but, like, the thing of it is they're not really, like, it's weird because they're called the Hellsing organization, and they're meant to combat paranormal activity. And Balalaika's like, I've heard of these guys. Like, I always thought, like, they were, I never realized they were a real thing. I never thought, I never thought that was an actual thing. So let's go find, they think we're just a bunch of gangsters, right? So let's correct them, Sergeant, of the error of their ways. So sure enough, Hotel Moscow has now declared war against the Hellsing organization. And there are some, like, Balalaika is giving her speech to her men, basically saying that, like, the enemy has attacked us without provocation, and we will hit back, so forth. And she's like, she sees, like, there's some nervousness among the men, and she's like, speak, what do you think? And they're like, we're all willing to go to war for you, Commander, but do you think it's wise to go to war with a branch of the British government? Could we could this spiral into a worse incident? And to which she's like, then let it come. You know, if we are to start World War III, then we will start it and we will end it. So, Hotel Moscow now hits back at Hellsing, the Hellsing organization, finding any little thing they can find about them, and basically hitting small bases, hitting troops, and Integra at first is kind of taken aback by this. And she's actually like, this was not what I was expecting at all. And she eventually gets a file on Balalaika and discovers, you know, everything she had done in Afghanistan with her men, and she's like, oh, they're not just basic mobsters, they're ex-military, Spetsnaz, they have combat training. That's why they're so hard to take down. But they're still just human. So the Hellsing organization hits back, and of course Balalaika has learned about Integra Hellsing, and she's actually like respectful of it because she's like, she sees so much of Integra in her, and likewise with Integra. So it's basically these two queens leading their soldiers into battle. But it is very clear that Moscow can go tit for tat against the Hellsing organization. That is, until it is decided that something needs to change. There needs to be a game changer in the field. And even like the wild geese are on the ground, and they proceed to raise some hell. Hotel Moscow is actually have some of their cells in Britain. Some of the chapters in Britain also hit back. So now it's just like bombs, explosions, and the British government is like starting to get in on it, because the British government like directly talks to Integra, and they're like, so let me get this straight. You are aware they're not vampires, right? We know what Hotel Moscow is. They're an international, Russian mafia, and it is like, this is more for SAS. Like this is a little beneath you, Integra, if they're not vampires. And she's like, we have reason to believe they are protecting Millennium. They are and if they're not going to help, if they're not going to like lay down and die and protect us, or help us and turn over any kind of information of Millennium, then we're going to deal with them as an enemy. And they're like, right, so you are aware that the Russian government in some capacity does back Hotel Moscow, and the more you hit at them, the more the Russian government's going to get a little more deeper into the situation, right? So either pull back, or this is going to be an international incident between Britain and Russia. And Integra's like, I'm sorry, do you know who I am? So they're like, look, just end you need to end this before it spirals out of control, which I guarantee you it will. So they're like, well, they are pretty powerful, and it is like a game of chess that is becoming slowly like a stalemate. That is, until Integra is basically like, we've been like Balalaika and I have been playing chess, but now it's time to put the king on the field, and Alucard is now been dispatched on the field, and Alucard gets sent to Roanapur and proceeds to wreck shit, because Alucard proceeds to just fucking eradicate everything in his path. And they're like, and the these soldiers are like horrified. They're like, these hardened former Spetsnaz warriors are like horrified at at this enemy, and they're like reporting to Balalaika as like, they've now dispatched only one agent, and we don't know, we can't kill him. And she's like, what? Are you serious? Like, we can't, like, who is this agent? And they're like, they don't have any records on him. And sure enough, Alucard is just killing his way into Hotel Moscow's base of operation. And Alucard and like Balalaika then faces him head on with some of her top men, because now she's like seeing her comrades get butchered left and right by Alucard, who's just like, this is a waste of my time. Like, this is nothing to me. Like, you guys are this isn't a waste of time. There's not a single vampire. And she's like, time out, vampires? What the fuck are you? And they're like, And he's like, I'm a vampire, and you guys aren't vampires, clearly, but you're clearly working with Millennium. And they're like, Millennium? We told those guys to get the fuck out of Roanna months ago. And, of course, Integra's hearing all this, and she immediately goes, oh, shit. We got played. Sure enough, Millennium did try to set up a base in Roanna, but they're Nazis, and Bellalaika may be criminals, but she does have she did have family that fought, descendants that fought in Stalingrad. So she was like, get the fuck out. So Millennium was like, cool, we're gonna make you regret it. And instead, send vampires into Roanna to kill them all. The Major basically orchestrated a war between Hellsing and Hotel Moscow to distract Hellsing, because they knew Hotel Moscow couldn't win an all-out war with the moment they put Alucard on the field, it was over. But they knew they weren't going to. It would give them enough time, and even a month of war between the two factions would give them enough time to set shit up on their own accord. So both sides got played, and Alucard, of course, is like, "What do you want me to do now?" And she's like, "Return to base. This has been a clusterfuck." So Alucard departs, but Bellalaika's like, "You killed all of my men, and you just walk away." And she just starts shooting at Alucard, and he's like, be thankful I'm going home, because I would have killed you for that. And of course, Bellalaika doesn't understand that this is a fucking vampire. She can't wrap her head around that this is she's talking to goddamn Count Dracula. But Alucard leaves, and Bellalaika is just like, I feel like we all got played in that situation. So there you go, guys. That is Hellsing versus Hotel Moscow. I'd like to thank Cyborg 19.99 for this Patreon request, as well as continued patronage. And other than that, I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse.